what would he say to me? God spoke to Jeremiah in the call of Jeremiah. Jeremiah was one of these people who was desperate to see God do something good. When we look at the world we live in today, we can be desperate. You know, I constantly worry about the state of the country, the state of the government, the state of the collective church, and I have such a frustration inside about wanting to get it right and wanting to see God move. But the world is probably in some ways no longer as positive and as secure as it was. But in Jeremiah's day, it was probably a lot worse. Jerusalem was about to fall, and he prophesied basically sort of 500 years-ish before Christ, and was aware of what was going on around him, and God spoke to him. How did God speak to him? We don't know. But he heard from God in a powerful way. And here in the book of Jeremiah, from chapter 1, verse 4 onwards, he starts to speak, and he says, "The word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Bible scholars will tell you that there are verses in the Bible that apply to the whole of history, and some of them apply to just one person. This is one verse that, although it applies just to Jeremiah, it can also be interpreted as God's sentiment, God's feeling towards those who follow him. Verse 6 onwards, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I don't know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send and to say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down and destroy and overthrow and build and to plant. The word of the Lord came to me. What you see, Jeremiah? What do you see? I see a branch of an almond tree, I replied. The Lord said to me, you have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled. The word of the Lord came to me again and said, what do you see? I see a pot that's boiling, I answered. It is tilting towards us from the north. Then the Lord said to me, from the north disaster will be poured out to all who live in the land. I am about to summon all the peoples of the northern kingdoms, declares the Lord. And I'll leave that there. So the date of actually writing the book of Jeremiah, so I got it slightly wrong, it was between 630 BC and 580 BC. And at that point, the Holy Land was two kingdoms. There was Judah, which consisted of the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And then there was Israel, which was the northern kingdom. Israel at that time was its capital in Samaria. So it was split for a while because of Solomon's two sons. And at this point, it was two. And some 100 years earlier, the northern kingdom of Israel had been taken into captivity by the Assyrians. And now it was about to happen to Judah and Jerusalem. And Jeremiah looked around him and saw complete impending doom, disaster, wilderness. And the good thing about things like this in the Bible is that we see time and time again of men and women and kingdoms that are in that situation, and God got them out of it. God did something. God spoke through it. God turned their mess into a message. God, out of their disaster, did something. That's why sometimes I look at the state of Christianity in this country, and I think ultimately, I was talking to somebody this afternoon, God has got to do something. Something's got to happen. I don't know when. I hope it's in my lifetime, and it will happen, and something will happen, I think, to a church somewhere in the south of England, maybe Romsey, but hopefully, but if not, then a church, and God will do something. And then we'll all look at it and think, that's what God's doing. And then God will speak to us and talk to us about our part in it. But I think God has got to do something new soon. Because when we look at everything, we may be tempted to have the same type of gloom and doom that Isaiah did, and we don't need to have that. But it mentioned a few things here, and I would say that God's commission to Isaiah is the same as God's commission to you. I'm going to go home tonight, and I'm going to, a bit later, before I go to bed, I want to pray, and I want to say, Lord, I preached this to the congregation tonight. You're saying that to me as a human being. Not as a pastor, but as a human being, as a Christian. You are saying this to me. What do you want me to do? And I will go into the week with freshness and with confidence and with positivity, because I'm going into a new week, and God will give me new wine. God will give me new hope from his word, because I believe he's speaking for it now. So what God said to Jeremiah, God is also saying to you. He said, before I knew you, you were born. Before I knew you, before I saw you in the womb, you were born. And he says to you, before those things happened in your life, before that thing happened in your family, before that person died, before this happened, God knew you before them, and even before you were formed in the womb. And there are people right now that are not born, that are not formed in the womb, maybe pregnant ladies that you know in Romsey, but God knows them and has a plan for their life right now. Because even if this in the first two stages of conception, because a human being is a human being right from the first part. And even right from the beginning, God knows them, and God knows you, and God knew you before you were born. I visited my cousin in Derby many years ago, and he told me when I was there about something that happened before I was born. But he's in his late 60s, my cousin is, and he's not a Christian, but he's a nice guy, and him and his wife, me and Jackie went to see them, and he says, "Oh, your dad?" He says, "Yeah, he used to into radio bits, and he used to build bits of radio. He'd come around here and teach me how to build radio." I thought, I didn't know that. It happened before I was born. You see, God didn't need me to make anything happen in the 1960s, 50s, 40s, or 30s. Didn't need me. But he was just doing things with other people. And he won't need me afterwards. And I tell you what, he won't need my permission. He won't need my permission. What he requires me to do is submit myself to him and say, in this period of time where I am here, you knew me, and my job is to follow you and lift you up and follow you and trust you. And when the Lord calls me home, then there will be other people who will probably do a better job or a different job. And he also says, and we also see that he's able to make you stand. He will make you stand for him. I don't know how to speak. I'm too young. But the Lord said, don't say I'm too young, for you must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Don't be afraid of them, because I'm with you and I'll rescue you. And the Lord is able to rescue you. He will make you stand for him. And so the best thing we can all say every day is I was sharing this morning, I don't tend to worry about too many things now that are going to happen in the future. I say, Lord, it's up to you to make happen tomorrow what you want. All I want is the strength and the grace and the humility and the power from you to deal with it however you want me to do. Because life each day is almost a task. It's an obstacle course, and God will give us the strength to go through it. And if we trust him and honour him, it'll always make it probably easier than we thought it was going to do. And he talks about here going where he leads us. Wherever he leads us, we need to be following him and going where he leads us individually. He talks about in verse 18, he says, I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar and a bronze wall to stand against the whole land. So he's actually here knowing what will happen, knowing that Nebuchadnezzar will come in, and God is commissioning him and saying, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that political party. Don't worry about that. I am doing something in you which is part of the answer to the problem you've got. And so when you look around you and say, Lord, this is a big problem. The fabric of Christianity is falling down around us. The country, the politics of the country are falling down. The morals, this, that, and everything else. God says, not only will I show you the solution, I may even make you part of the solution, because he will use you in small ways. And what happened with Jeremiah, if you read through the whole book, is that Jeremiah he's called the weeping prophet, because he just had this message from God that he wanted everyone to know about, and it didn't happen. Now, if Jeremiah could look ahead and see the birth of Christ and see what God is doing in the world and will continue to do, and at the end of the day, we don't know all that God's doing in the world. We can look at disasters here and think, why isn't a revival happening in England? I want a big revival on the south coast. I've wanted it for years, and it's going to happen. Something somewhere will happen. It's got to, because Christianity is so brilliant, and that it's so the truth that it will spread across and be the answer to what people are looking at. But it may not be in the way that we want it to happen. I've tried to make things happen in certain ways, and I probably, and I believe that God's going to do something so fresh and so different in our lives. And he says that they will fight against you. In verse 19, they will fight against you, but you will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. People will fight against your Christian message. If you stood in the middle of Romsey and mentioned all the things that you believe, you would not win any favours with a lot of people. We know that because we've done it. We know that. But there is no other path in life. As a Christian minister or non-minister or whatever, there is no other path other than standing up every day for Jesus, standing up for truth, standing up for the gospel, standing up for correct doctrine, and just sharing the love of Christ with other people. And I know so many of you in this room do that all the time. And I remembered when I was a Christian, first became a Christian, how God challenged me and said, are you going to do this properly now? Because when I was about 16, 17 to 18, I sort of played around with Christianity a little bit. Didn't quite went to church, but didn't quite do it properly. But God said to me, I am calling you. And it was very similar to this call of Jeremiah. And I can't see anything else worth living for, personally. If I tried to do something else, I'd be depressed, I'd be bored, and I wouldn't be very good at it, and I wouldn't be successful at it. I'm not talking about being a Christian minister. That's part of my Christian life. I'm talking about being a Christian, being a follower of Jesus. To me, that is the most satisfactory thing. It's the most wonderful thing that I can do, and I wouldn't go back. And we see that, we can see that when you have this commission, God's gives you this commission, absolutely and utterly, without a shadow of a doubt, you can see God working in the positives, but also you can see the devil working in the background. There is opposition. Opposition will be there. Don't worry about the opposition. Pray about it. That's the best thing to do. When in 1990, the church that I was at, I was on the leadership team of a big church, but it wasn't an Elim church. I was a junior leader at a place called Allington, which is south part of Derby, and we planted a congregation, and we had this fun day at a school, and we had a praise march through the actual congregation, through the housing estate, and we had this fun day, and it was, they had a church service the following day and said, come along, then we had a football competition, five-a-side and something else, and it's like a car boot sale, and lots of people came from the estate. And we said, come along, we've got a church service in the school tomorrow, come along, look forward to seeing you. Any questions on Christianity? Meal afterwards. And this man walked in off the estate. He just happened to be an Afro-Caribbean man, but he was obviously not a Christian. And he walked up to, remember Joe Russo? Joe was one of the leaders of the congregation. And Joe was there, and he was kind of the youth leader, but one of the youth leaders as well, one of the leaders of the congregation. And this man walked up to him and didn't say anything and stood there and stared at him for ages. And it was just evil. He just stared at him. And we knew that this man was one of the gang leaders on the estate. And I said to Ali, my pastor, said, "Do you want me to get the police?" He said, "No, just don't do anything. Get out of the way." And he was staring at him like that. And we were praying in the background. And in the end, everyone was really quiet. And in the end, this man walked away. And we believe that from that point onwards, God started to do something. So what I'm saying is simply this: don't be afraid or worried when there is opposition to Christianity. There is always, I experience opposition every single week. It happens. The moment you stand up and say, "I'm a Christian," you're going to get opposition. But Jeremiah, in the midst of that very difficult situation, was aware that he had a stronger God who stood with him and who gave him the ability. And he gave this commission to Jeremiah. And not only did he give him the commission, he gave him the means by which he could do what God had called him to do. Verse 10, "See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and to overthrow, and to build and to plant." And he might say something different to you. He might say, when you're out in the cafes in Romsey or in Aldi or wherever, he might say, "Oh, by the way, that man over there, go and chat to him." "Oh, no, I don't want to be controversial." "No, I'm appointing you to do that. I'll give you strength to do it. I'll let you know what to do," or whatever he's calling you to do. But he is calling you to do something so special that is every bit as important and every bit as regal as some evangelists on the television. What you are called to do. And you may be in a wilderness now thinking, what next? Where do I go next? What do I do? God will speak to you, because Jeremiah at this point was also in a wilderness. And he says, Jesus said, he speaks obviously through the church. And there's this verse in Acts 13:47. "For this is what the Lord has commanded us. I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth." So God is giving you the task that needs to be done. He's giving me the task that needs to be done. And he's calling us to rely on him and say, "God, what shall we do today together? What should we do today together?" Jackie's grand who died in Jersey in 2001, was disabled. She was in her 80s, and she couldn't move out of the block of flats where she was. And she used to basically bring people around in the courtyard in the flats and encourage them and witness to them. And every morning she'd get up and say, she had far more patience than me. She'd get up in the morning and say, "Lord, I'm not able to go anywhere today, but what are we going to do today together, Jesus?" Not, "My arthritis is this, or this has happened, or that's happened." But today, Jesus, what are we going to do today together? And whatever you are facing, you can have this attitude. Do you want to come up and where you say, "What are we going to do today together?" And God will give you and remind you of your commission that is given to you, that he spoke to you about in your baptism, that he spoke to you about in a church service here, there, or wherever else. And you can have the same commission that God gave to Jeremiah. And God can do great things to you and through you tomorrow. You are the answer. Christ in you is the answer to what you're looking for. And I know that God's saying that to me. As I just look around at the state of the church in this country and the country, I'm thinking, it's overwhelming. Lord, what can I do? But I bet you, I'm not a betting man, but I say, I bet you if I woke up tomorrow morning and just got in the presence of God, God would speak to me about what he wants me to do tomorrow. And it'll be no more fantastic than what God's calling you to do. There are people in this church who've got far greater spiritual gifts than me. I'm just one person, I'm a facilitator. But God will do it through his church.